You didn't come here by accident tonight. Something in you was too tired to scroll past, too worn down to pretend everything is fine. And so here you are, and I'm glad you stayed. I want you to picture something for a moment. A fire. Small, steady, warm. The kind that doesn't roar or perform. It just burns. Quietly. Faithfully. And beside it, someone waiting. Not checking the time. Not about to leave. Just there. Present. Patient in a way that almost doesn't make sense anymore in this world. That's where we're going tonight. Because I think you've been carrying something heavy for a while now. Maybe longer than you've admitted to anyone. And the weight of it, the quiet, grinding weight of it, has settled into your bones in a way that sleep doesn't fix and distraction only delays. You're not broken. You're not forgotten. You're just tired. And there is a difference. Tonight, we're going to sit by that fire together. You, me, and the one who lit it. And by the time we're done, something in you is going to feel different. Not fixed. Real rest doesn't work like that. But different. Lighter. Reminded. Stay with me. There's a kind of tired that nobody talks about. Not the tired that a good night's sleep fixes. Not the tired that a vacation cures or a weekend away softens. I'm talking about the other kind. The deep kind. The kind that lives somewhere behind your eyes and underneath your chest, and has been there so long you've almost stopped noticing it. Almost. It's the tired that comes from years of trying, from loving people who didn't love you back the way you needed, from praying prayers that seemed to dissolve into the ceiling before they ever went anywhere, from doing the right thing, quietly, faithfully, without applause, and watching life continue to be hard anyway. It's the tired that comes from loss. Not always the dramatic kind. Sometimes it's the slow losses. The version of your life you thought you'd be living by now. The relationships that drifted. The health that changed without asking your permission. The dreams you set down somewhere along the road because you simply didn't have the strength to carry them any further. That kind of tired doesn't have a name in most conversations. People ask how you're doing, and you say fine, because the real answer would take too long and worry them. And you've learned over the years that most people asking don't have the capacity to hold what you'd actually say if you told the truth. So you carry it alone, and you keep moving. Because that's what you do. That's what people like you do. You keep moving. But here's what I want to say to you tonight, gently, plainly, the way a friend speaks when there's no reason left to be anything but honest. Keeping moving is not the same as being okay. And God knows the difference. He always has. There's a moment in the book of Kings that I keep coming back to. Elijah, a man who had called down fire from heaven, who had stood alone against hundreds, who had prayed with such conviction that rain returned to a drought-parched land. This same man, shortly after one of the greatest victories of his life, sat down under a tree in the wilderness and asked God to let him die. Read that again slowly. He didn't ask for strength. He didn't ask for a strategy. He didn't ask God to help him fight back or press forward or rise again. He sat down, under a tree, and said, "It is enough. I am done." And what did God do? He didn't rebuke him. He didn't remind him of all the miracles. He didn't give him a speech about purpose or calling or how much work was still left to do. He let him sleep. And then an angel touched him, gently, like a hand on a shoulder in a dark room, and said, "Arise and eat. The journey is too great for you." That's it. That's the whole response. Rest. Food. A quiet acknowledgement that the road ahead is long and that a person cannot walk it on empty. God met Elijah not with a sermon, but with sleep and bread. Think about that for a moment. The creator of the universe, responding to a man's exhaustion, not with theology, but with tenderness. That is who is waiting for you by that fire tonight. Not a judge. Not a taskmaster reviewing your performance. Not a disappointed father tallying your failures. The one who looked at a burned-out prophet under a desert tree and said, "Rest first. We'll talk about the rest later." He hasn't changed, and you are not less than Elijah. I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it honestly before you answer. When did you last truly rest? Not slept, not collapsed from exhaustion into a few hours of unconsciousness before the alarm pulled you back into the noise. I mean rested. The kind of rest where something inside you actually loosened, where the tension behind your shoulders softened, where you weren't mentally somewhere else, rehearsing tomorrow, replaying yesterday, calculating what still needs to be done and by when and what happens if it isn't. Most people I talk to, when they really think about it, can't remember. And that's not a small thing. That's not a minor inconvenience to be scheduled around. That is a signal. A quiet, persistent signal from somewhere deep inside you that something is wrong with the way you've been living. Not wrong in a moral sense. Wrong in the sense of unsustainable. Wrong in the sense of a body of water being drawn from constantly without ever being refilled. You can only give from what you have. And for a long time now, you've been giving from what you don't have. Jesus knew this about people. He watched it. He lived among it. He walked through villages full of people who were, in his own words, harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. People moving through their days with the surface appearance of function, while something underneath them was fraying. And he didn't look at them with impatience. The scripture says he looked at them and felt compassion. Deep, gut-level compassion. The kind that moves before it thinks. The kind that doesn't calculate whether the person deserves it first. He saw the exhaustion underneath the activity. He always does. There's a conversation he has, one of the most quietly remarkable conversations in all of Scripture, with a woman at a well in the middle of the day. She's there alone. That detail matters. Wells in that time were social places, mourning places, places where women gathered in the cool of the day. A woman coming alone, at noon, under the full weight of the sun, is a woman avoiding people. A woman carrying something she doesn't want to explain. Jesus sits down beside her and asks for water. Not, "What's wrong with you?" Not, "I know your story and we need to talk about your choices." He asks for water. He begins where she is. He meets her in the ordinary moment, the mundane errand, the middle of a Tuesday that was supposed to be nothing. And slowly, gently, without shame or accusation, he moves the conversation toward the thing she's actually thirsty for, the thing no bucket and no well had ever been able to reach. He says to her, "Everyone who drinks from this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks from the water I give will never thirst." There is a rest, he is saying, that this world cannot manufacture. There is a stillness that no vacation produces, no achievement unlocks, no relationship delivers. There is a water that goes all the way down to the place inside you that has been dry for years, and fills it. That's what he came to offer. Not a better system, not a more efficient routine, not tips for managing your exhaustion more effectively. Himself. "Come to me," he said, "all of you who are weary and burdened. Come to me, and I will give you rest." Not, "Come to me when you've figured it out." Not, "Come to me once you've cleaned yourself up and sorted through your doubts and gotten your faith to a respectable level." Come to me, as you are, tonight, tired and frayed and not entirely sure what you believe anymore. Come anyway, because the fire is already lit, and he is already there, and he has been waiting, with a patience that outlasts your resistance, for exactly this moment. The moment you stopped pretending you were fine, the moment you sat down. There's something about a fire that changes the way you speak. You've noticed it, I think. Around a fire, a real one, wood and smoke and amber light, people don't talk the same way they talk in offices or grocery stores or even at dinner tables. The noise drops away. The performance softens. People say things they didn't plan to say. Truths surface that have been waiting quietly beneath the ordinary conversation of daily life. There's a reason for that. Fire demands presence. You can't be beside a real fire and be fully somewhere else. The warmth pulls you back. The sound of it, that low, steady crackling, works on something inside you like a hand gently pressing your shoulders down, saying, "You don't have to hold yourself up so tightly right now. You can breathe." I think that's part of why, all through Scripture, God shows up in fire. The burning bush that stopped Moses in his tracks on an ordinary afternoon. The pillar of fire that led a people through darkness they could not have navigated alone. The tongues of flame at Pentecost descending on frightened, grieving, uncertain people who had no idea what came next. Fire, in the language of God, is not destruction first, it is presence first. It is the signal that says, "I am here, I have not left, look at me." And Moses. I want to stay with Moses for a moment because his story carries something for you tonight that I don't want to rush past. Moses, at the time of the burning bush, was not in a season of greatness. He was not standing at the height of his influence or in the middle of his calling or at a moment of obvious destiny. He was in the desert. He had been in the desert for 40 years. 40 years of tending someone else's flock, in a land far from where he was born, carrying the weight of a past he could not undo. A moment of violence, a flight, a failure that had cost him everything he thought he was going to be. 40 years. Most of us would have concluded, somewhere around year 12 or 15, that God had moved on, that the window had closed, that whatever we had once imagined for our lives was simply not going to happen, and the wise and dignified thing to do was to make peace with that and stop expecting otherwise. Moses had every reason to believe that. And then, on an afternoon like any other afternoon, on a hillside like any other hillside, something burned and did not burn up, and a voice said his name, Moses. Moses. 2 syllables. His name, spoken twice. The way you say someone's name when you want them to know you're not in a hurry, when you want them to feel that they have your full attention and you have time. Moses. I see you. I know you. I have not forgotten you. Not in the wilderness, not in the failure, not in the long, quiet years that felt like nothing was happening. I was there the whole time. That is the God who is beside you tonight. Not the God of your best moments only. The God of the desert years. The God of the 40 years. The God who lets the fire burn without consuming and speaks into the ordinary Tuesday of a man who had stopped expecting anything remarkable and says, I know your name, and I have something to say to you. You may be in a desert season right now. Things may be quieter than you thought they would be at this point in your life. The path may look different, narrower, less certain, less impressive than the one you once imagined you'd be walking. And somewhere inside you, in a place you don't often visit, there may be a grief about that. A quiet mourning for the life that didn't happen the way you expected. That's allowed. God is not frightened by your grief. He is not put off by the gap between what you hoped for and what you have. He invented lament. Half the Psalms are people shaking their fists at heaven and saying, Where are you? Why is this so hard? How long must I wait? And God called those Psalms sacred. He put them in His book. He preserved them for thousands of years so that you, tonight, in your particular tiredness, would know, you are not the first. You are not alone. And the silence you've been hearing is not absence. It is the moment just before the fire appears. Rest is not something most of us were taught. Not real rest. Not the kind that goes deeper than the body. We were taught to produce. We were taught that our value lived somewhere inside our output. What we accomplished, what we provided, what we built, what we maintained, what we held together through sheer force of will and quiet sacrifice. And for a long time, that felt true. It felt like meaning, and there was meaning in it. I don't want to take that away from you. The years of work, the years of showing up, the years of being the one people counted on. That was real. That mattered. You were not wrong to give yourself to it. But somewhere along the way, the doing became the only language you knew. And when life slowed, when the children grew and left, when the career plateaued or ended, when the body began asking for things you didn't know how to give it, when the relationships that once filled the room grew quieter, you didn't know what to do with the silence, because the silence had no task in it, and without a task, you weren't sure who you were. That's not weakness. That's the natural result of decades lived in a culture that worships productivity and calls rest laziness, and measures a person's worth almost entirely by what they can demonstrate on the outside. But God has always operated by a different measure. From the very beginning, from the first pages of the first book, He built rest into the architecture of existence, not as a reward for finishing, not as something earned after sufficient labor. He rested on the seventh day and called it holy. He wove it into the rhythm of creation itself, into the fabric of time, as if to say from the start, stillness is not absence of purpose. Stillness is its own sacred thing. The Sabbath was never just a rule. It was a statement about reality. It was God saying, you are not a machine. You were not made to run without stopping. The earth itself breathes in seasons. The fields lie fallow and come back more fertile for the rest. You are no different. You need this. Not as indulgence, as design. And yet, we fight it. Almost all of us fight it. Because rest requires something that productivity doesn't. It requires trust. When you're working, you're in control. You're doing. You're making something happen. Rest asks you to stop making things happen and believe that the world will continue turning without your constant intervention. It asks you to release your grip, and that is terrifying for people who have learned, often through hard experience, that when they let go of things, things fall. Maybe someone let go once and something did fall. Maybe you were the one left holding everything when another person stopped holding their share. Maybe life taught you early that vigilance was survival, and rest was a luxury that other people had but you could not afford. If that's your story, I hear it. And I am not going to tell you that it wasn't real, or that the lessons you drew from it were foolish. They were reasonable conclusions from painful evidence. But I want to offer you something tonight. Not a rebuttal, just a different piece of evidence. There is a psalm, the 23rd, that most people know so well they've stopped actually hearing it. Familiar words have a way of becoming wallpaper. We see them without seeing them. So let me say it slowly, in plain language, without the cadence you've heard 100 times. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Makes me. Not, he invites me. Not, he suggests I consider it. He makes me. Because the shepherd knows that the sheep, left to themselves, will keep moving even when they are exhausted. Sheep don't stop on their own when they need rest. They have to be led to stillness, sometimes guided, sometimes gently stopped. Is it possible that some of what you've been experiencing, the slowdown, the season of quiet, the circumstances that have removed your usual ways of striving, is not punishment? Is it possible that it is the shepherd, reading you more accurately than you read yourself, leading you to a place you would never have chosen but desperately needed? Green pastures, still waters, a restoration of the soul. Not after you've earned it, not once you've figured out what comes next. Now, here, in the middle of the uncertainty and the unanswered questions, and the life that doesn't look the way you planned. He makes me lie down. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop fighting it. There is a moment in the night that most people who are tired know very well. It's not the moment of falling asleep. It's the moment just before it, when the day is finally done and the house is quiet and the phone is down and there is nothing left to do and nowhere left to be. And instead of peace, what rises is everything you've been too busy to feel all day. The worry that was waiting patiently in the corner. The grief you set aside at breakfast because there were things to get done. The question that has no answer yet and may not have one for a long time. The loneliness that the noise of the day successfully drowned out, but that the silence of the night resurrects with quiet precision. That moment. You know it. And in that moment, most of us do one of two things. We reach for something. The phone, the television, another cup of something. Anything to fill the silence back up again before it can speak too loudly. Or we lie there and let it wash over us. That particular mixture of exhaustion and unease. And we call it insomnia, or anxiety, or just getting older. And we wait for morning to rescue us from the night. But what if the night is not the enemy? What if the silence, uncomfortable as it is actually the first honest moment of your entire day? The moment when the constructed version of yourself, the capable one, the managing one, the one who has it mostly together, finally gets quiet enough for the real you to surface. The you that is uncertain, the you that is grieving, the you that is more frightened than you've admitted, and more lonely than you've let on, and more hungry for something real than the life you're currently living is providing. What if that moment is not a problem to be solved, but a door? David understood the night. Read the Psalms he wrote in darkness, and you'll find a man who did not sanitize his nighttime hours into something presentable. He wrote about lying on his bed and soaking it with tears. He wrote about his soul refusing to be comforted. He wrote about crying out and feeling as though heaven had gone silent, and the darkness had become his closest companion. This is the man God called a man after his own heart. Not because David had it together, not because his faith was clean and consistent and never visited by doubt, but because David kept turning toward God even in the dark. Even when the turning felt like shouting into an empty room. Even when the only prayer he could manage was, "Are you there? Can you hear me? How long?" He kept turning. And here is what I've come to believe, after many years and many nights of my own. God is not only present in the bright moments of faith. He is not only accessible when you arrive clean and composed and certain. He is in the dark hours too. He is in the 3 a.m. too. He is in the half prayer that barely makes it past your lips, the wordless groan that is too tired for language, the simple act of a weary soul rolling over in the dark and whispering, "I can't do this alone anymore." That whisper reaches him, every time. There is a story Jesus tells, not about a great hero of faith, not about someone who prayed eloquently or believed without wavering, about a man who had 2 sons, and the younger one left, took everything he was owed and walked away and spent it and ended up in a foreign country feeding pigs and starving. so far from home that home felt like something he had dreamed and not lived. And then the scripture says something that stops me every time I read it. He came to himself. Not, he cleaned himself up. Not, he composed a convincing argument for why he deserved to be taken back. He came to himself. He sat in the mud and the stench of his failure, and he stopped pretending. He stopped performing. He let himself see clearly, perhaps for the first time in a long time, exactly where he was, and exactly what he had done, and exactly how desperate his situation truly was. And from that place, that raw, undefended, completely honest place, he turned toward home. He didn't know what reception he would get. He had rehearsed a speech, a carefully managed re-entry. He would come as a servant, not a son. He would ask for nothing more than he deserved. He had lowered his expectations all the way to the floor. But the father had been watching the road. And while the son was still a great way off, the father ran. Not walked. Not waited at the door with arms crossed, prepared to hear the apology before deciding. Ran. Toward the dirty, ashamed, rehearsing, not yet arrived son. Ran with a robe and a ring and an embrace that the son had not finished earning by the time it landed on his shoulders. That is the fire by which we are sitting tonight. That is the one who lit it and who is tending it and who has been watching the road in your direction for longer than you know. You don't have to have the speech ready. You don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to arrive clean. Just turn toward home. He will cover the rest of the distance. I want to pause here for a moment, right here in the middle of our time together, and say something directly. If this conversation has been reaching something in you tonight, if something in these words has been landing in a place that doesn't usually get touched, I want you to know that this is what this channel exists for. Not for noise, not for performance, not to add one more voice to the overwhelming volume of things competing for your attention. This is a place built for exactly this, for the quiet conversations, for the honest ones, for the kind of talk that treats you like an adult who has lived a real life and doesn't need to be managed or entertained or sold something, but simply met, honestly, with depth. If that's something you want more of, stay close. Subscribe. Come back tomorrow and the day after. Walk with this for a while and see what it does in you over time. Because some things don't happen in a single sitting. They happen in the accumulation of quiet, faithful returns to what is true. And that is what we are building here, together, one conversation at a time. Now, back to the fire. Because there is something I haven't said yet that needs to be said tonight. Something that sits underneath all the exhaustion and all the striving and all the quiet grief of a life that has been genuinely hard in ways that other people don't always see. It's the question of whether any of it meant anything. Not dramatically. Not in a crisis of faith way necessarily. Just the low, persistent hum of a question that surfaces in the honest hours. The years of prayer. Did they do anything? The faithfulness in small things when no one was watching. Did it register? The losses endured without bitterness. The forgiveness extended when it cost something. The slow and unglamorous work of trying to be a decent person in a world that doesn't always reward decency. Was any of it seen? It is a real question, and I think God honors it more than we expect. Because the alternative, the performance of certainty, the pretense that we never wonder, the religious cheerfulness that pastes a confident smile over a trembling interior, that is not faith. That is management. And God is not looking for managers of their own doubt. He is looking for people honest enough to bring the doubt to him directly. Job did this. Job, who lost everything in a span of days, children, livelihood, health, the future he had built, sat in the ash heap and refused the easy answers his friends kept offering. He refused to say what wasn't true just to make the theology tidy. He argued with God. He demanded an audience. He said, "I will not be quiet. I will speak. And if I am wrong, show me where." And God, at the end of that long, agonizing, unresolved conversation, did not rebuke Job for his honesty. He rebuked the friends who had offered comfortable lies. And he spoke to Job from the whirlwind, not with answers exactly, but with presence, with the overwhelming, undeniable, almost unbearable reality of his nearness. Sometimes that is what God gives instead of explanation. Not the answer to why, but himself. The inexplicable comfort of a presence so real that the question, for a moment, loses some of its urgency. Not because it has been answered, but because the one beside you is large enough to hold it with you without being threatened by it. That is what faith looks like at 45, or 55, or 65. after the years have done what years do. It doesn't look like the uncomplicated certainty of youth. It looks like Job in the ash heap, still talking to a God he cannot fully understand, refusing to walk away, refusing to pretend, refusing to settle for the comfortable lie when the uncomfortable truth is the only thing left with any real weight to it. It looks like a person sitting by a fire late at night, tired in ways that go deeper than sleep can reach, still here, still listening, still, somewhere underneath everything, believing that the voice that spoke to Moses and ran toward the prodigal and wept at Lazarus' tomb and sweated blood in Gethsemane is not finished speaking, still believing that the fire is real and that the warmth you feel right now in this quiet moment is not imagination. It is him, close, present, unhurried, tending the fire, waiting for you to stop explaining yourself long enough to simply receive. There is a kind of prayer that nobody teaches you. Not the kind with the right words in the right order. Not the kind that sounds composed and theologically sound, and moves from adoration to confession to thanksgiving to supplication in the prescribed sequence. Not the kind you were taught in church or read in a book, or heard someone else offer so beautifully that you wondered if your own prayers, by comparison, even counted. I mean the other kind. The kind that is barely language at all. The kind that comes out in the car on the way home from the appointment that didn't go well. The kind that happens at the kitchen sink with your hands in the water and your eyes unfocused, and something inside you just leaking. The kind that is not a request exactly, and not worship exactly, and not anything you could write down or repeat, just a turning. A raw, unpolished, thoroughly human turning toward the only direction that has ever made any sense. That kind of prayer. I want to tell you tonight that that kind counts. More than you know. More perhaps than the eloquent ones. Because prayer was never primarily about language. Language is the vehicle, not the destination. What God is after, what he has always been after, from the garden where he walked in the cool of the day looking for the people he had made, is contact. Presence. The simple, irreducible reality of a soul turning its face toward him and saying, in whatever broken and inarticulate way it can manage, I need you. I cannot do this without you. I don't even know exactly what I'm asking for, but I know that you are the only one I want to ask. That is enough. It has always been enough. Paul writes about this in a letter, one of those letters composed in difficult circumstances, from a man who had been beaten and imprisoned and shipwrecked and left for dead. A man who knew exhaustion not as a concept, but as a lived, physical, ongoing reality. And he says, in a passage that I have returned to more times than I can count, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. Read that carefully. We do not know what to pray for as we ought. Paul is not describing a deficiency to be corrected. He is describing the normal condition of a human being who is honest about their limitations. We don't always know what we need. We don't always have the clarity to name the thing that is wrong, or identify the healing that is required, or articulate the exact shape of the help we are reaching for. We are often, in the most genuine moments of our lives, simply reaching into the dark, towards something we cannot fully see. And in that reaching, in that inarticulate groaning that goes beyond what words can carry, something holy is happening. The Spirit of God is taking what we cannot say and translating it into something that reaches the Father perfectly. Our weakness becomes the very place where divine intercession operates most freely. Your broken prayers are not second-class prayers. Your 3 a.m. prayers that are mostly silence and tears are not lesser prayers. Your can't find the words, too tired to kneel, barely holding on prayers are heard with the same perfect attention as anything offered by the most articulate saint who ever lived. Because God is not grading the presentation, he is receiving the heart. And your heart, underneath all the tiredness and the uncertainty and the years of living, your heart is still turned toward him. Otherwise, you would not be here tonight. Otherwise, something in you would not have responded to the idea of a fire and a presence and a rest that the world cannot give. That turning is prayer. That response is faith. That quiet yes that happens somewhere inside you when truth lands, that is the most real thing about you. Hold on to that tonight, because there will be mornings, and I say this not to discourage you but to prepare you honestly, the way a true friend does. There will be mornings when you wake up and the tiredness is still there, and the questions are still unanswered, and the circumstances haven't shifted, and the fire from tonight feels like a distant memory rather than a present warmth. On those mornings, remember this. The fire doesn't go out because you stopped feeling the heat. The warmth you feel in this moment is real. The presence you are sensing right now is not a product of mood or music or the particular vulnerability of a late evening. It is actual. It is Him. And He does not withdraw when the feeling fades. He remains, constant, faithful to a degree that our inconsistency makes difficult to fully comprehend. His mercies, the Scripture says, are new every morning. Not new because the old ones ran out. New because every morning is a beginning. Every morning is the fire relit. Every morning is the invitation extended again, quietly, without fanfare, without condition. Come, sit, rest. I am still here. I want to talk about what happens after the fire. Because we will not always be here, in this quiet, in this particular softness of evening, in this moment where something has loosened just enough for truth to get through. Morning comes. Life resumes. The inbox fills and the phone rings, and the people who need things from you do not pause to ask whether you've had sufficient time to recover your soul first. And the danger, the real danger for people like you, people who feel things deeply and care genuinely and have spent years giving themselves to others, is that you leave a moment like this one and carry the feeling for a day or two, and then slowly, almost imperceptibly, let the old rhythms reclaim you. The striving creeps back. The performing creeps back. The grinding forward motion that mistakes movement for meaning creeps back. And 6 weeks from now, you are exactly where you were before, only more tired, because now you also carry the faint memory of having once felt different and the quiet grief of having let it slip. I don't want that for you. So I want to say something practical, not a program, not a 7-step system, just something true and simple that you can carry with you when you walk away from this fire tonight. The rest that Jesus offers is not a one-time experience. It is a posture, a daily returning, a practice, if you want to use that word, of coming back to the place of stillness before the noise of the day has fully taken hold, before the demands have stacked themselves up and the weight of everything that needs to be done has settled onto your shoulders again. It is the discipline, and I use that word carefully because discipline and rest sound like opposites, but they are not. It is the discipline of beginning each day not with your task list, but with your face turned toward the one who holds the day in his hands and knows what it contains before you do. Not a long time necessarily, not a performance of devotion, just a moment, an honest moment, where you say, in whatever words come naturally or in no words at all, I am here. I need you today. I cannot carry this day the way I have been carrying days. Help me carry it differently. That is enough to begin with. That is more than enough. Because what you are doing in that moment is not earning anything. You are not accumulating spiritual credit or building a record of faithfulness that God will eventually reward. You are simply acknowledging what is true, that you are a creature and He is the Creator, that you are finite and He is not, that you were never designed to carry alone what was always meant to be shared. There is a yoke, Jesus says, His yoke, and He invites you to take it, not because a yoke is pleasant in itself, but because His yoke is easy and His burden is light. And the reason for that is not that life becomes simple or pain becomes rare, but that you are no longer pulling alone. He is in the yoke beside you, matched to your pace, bearing the weight with you, not watching from a distance while you struggle, but present, close, shoulder to shoulder in the actual work of your actual day. That changes everything. Not the circumstances. The circumstances may remain exactly as difficult as they have been, but the quality of presence within the difficulty changes entirely when you are not carrying it in isolation. I think of Peter on the water, that extraordinary, terrifying, completely irrational moment when a fisherman climbed out of a boat in the middle of a storm because a figure on the water said, "Come." And for a few impossible seconds, he walked, on water, in a storm, toward Jesus. And then he noticed the wind, and he began to sink, and he cried out, "Lord, save me." 3 words. The shortest prayer in the New Testament, possibly the most honest prayer ever prayed. Not a speech, not a confession of faith, not a theological statement, just the raw cry of a man going under who knew exactly where to direct it. And immediately, the Scripture says, immediately, Jesus reached out His hand and caught him. Before the lesson, before the gentle rebuke about little faith, Before any of the processing that came afterward, the hand came first, the catching came first, the saving came first. That is the reflex of God toward a person who is sinking. Not deliberation, not a review of whether the person deserved to be caught given their recent track record of doubt and inconsistency. Immediately, the hand, the catching. You may feel like you are sinking in some area of your life right now. The water may be coming up faster than you expected, and the boat feels very far away, and the wind is louder than you'd like. Cry out. 3 words or fewer. It doesn't have to be elegant. The hand is already moving. It moved before you finished the sentence. It moved, if I'm honest, before you even formed the words, because he saw you coming to yourself, like the prodigal in the far country, and he began moving toward you before you had fully turned. That is the nature of this love. It runs ahead of us. It anticipates our returning. It is already at the place we are headed before we have decided to go there. And so the fire you find when you arrive was not lit in response to your coming. It was lit in anticipation of it. He knew you would need this tonight. He knew, before the day began, that by the end of it, something in you would be too tired for pretense and just honest enough to sit down beside a fire and be still for a while. And he prepared it. He tended it. He kept it burning through all the hours of your busy and difficult and ordinary day, waiting for this moment. The moment you stopped. The moment you breathed. The moment you let yourself be found. And now here we are, almost at the end of our time together by this fire. One more thing left to say. The most important thing, perhaps. The thing I've been building towards since the very first word of this evening. Come back tomorrow. Not to this video necessarily, but to this posture, to this stillness, to this willingness to be honest about how you are, and to bring that honesty to the only one who can do something real with it. Come back tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Not because God will love you more for the consistency. He already loves you with a love that has no ceiling and no floor. But because you will know him better. And knowing him better is the only thing that has ever made the weight of living genuinely lighter. The fire is always burning. You just have to keep coming back to it. You stayed. I want you to notice that. Not as a small thing. In a world engineered to fragment your attention into pieces too small to feel anything deeply, you stayed. For this. For stillness. For the uncomfortable and necessary work of sitting with yourself and with God long enough for something real to happen. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. And I want to ask you, gently, honestly, the way we've been speaking all evening, what is different right now than when you first sat down? Not what you think should be different. Not the answer you would give if someone were grading your spiritual progress. What is actually different in the quiet of your own chest right now? I think something is. I think something shifted tonight, even if you can't fully name it yet. Something loosened. Some small and stubborn knot of tension that has been there so long you'd stopped noticing it is a little less tight than it was an hour ago. The weight is still there. I'm not going to pretend the fire magically dissolved everything that brought you here. But the weight feels different when you are not carrying it alone. And tonight, for this hour, you haven't been carrying it alone. That is what I want you to take with you. Not a feeling. Feelings come and go and cannot be trusted as the primary measure of anything. But a knowledge. A settled, quiet, bone-deep knowledge that you were not alone tonight, that the warmth you felt was real, that the presence beside this fire was not metaphor or wishful thinking or the comfort of a well-constructed story, but actual, living. The same presence that spoke into chaos at the beginning of everything and called it good, the same presence that walked in a garden looking for people who were hiding and called out to them not with anger but with a question, "Where are you?" Not because he didn't know, but because he wanted them to answer. He wanted the conversation. He wanted the returning. He still does. You are not a project to him. You are not a problem requiring management or a soul requiring repair before it becomes usable. You are known. Fully known. Every exhausted corner, every hidden grief, every doubt you've never said out loud, every prayer that felt like it dissolved before it reached the ceiling, all of it known, and none of it cause for the love to waver. That is the thing that took me the longest to believe. Not that God was powerful. That was easy enough. Not that God was good in some abstract theological sense. That too. But that the knowing and the loving were not in tension. That he could see everything, and still run toward me. Still tend the fire. Still wait by the road. Still call my name twice, the way he called Moses, the way he called Samuel in the night, The way he called Mary's name in a garden on the morning of the resurrection and watched her turn. Just that, just her turning, and met her there. Your name is known that way, said that way, with that kind of unhurried, unashamed, undiminished love. Carry that home tonight, and when the morning comes, when the ordinary weight of your ordinary life reassembles itself around you, and the fire feels distant, and the clarity of this hour has softened back into the usual noise, remember that you sat here. Remember that something was real. Remember that the shepherd who makes you lie down in green pastures does not lead you there once and then abandon you to find your own way back. He leads, present tense, ongoing, daily. You have not graduated from needing to be led. None of us have. And the sooner we stop pretending otherwise, the sooner we stop performing a self-sufficiency we do not actually possess, the sooner we find ourselves, almost without noticing, walking in something that feels remarkably, inexplicably, quietly, like peace. Not the peace the world gives. Jesus was very clear about that distinction. The world's peace is circumstantial. It depends on things going well, on the absence of threat, on the presence of enough comfort to drown out the underlying fear. His peace is different in kind, not just in degree. It passes understanding. It holds in the storm. It is present in the ash heap and the wilderness and the far country and the 3 a.m. and the doctor's office and the graveside and every other place where the world's version of peace has nothing to offer. It was in all of those places tonight, while we sat here together. It will be in all of those places tomorrow, because he goes before you, into the day you haven't lived yet, into the week you cannot see clearly, into the season whose shape is still forming. He is already there, already tending fires you haven't reached yet, already preparing places of rest along a road that will ask more of you than you currently feel equipped to give. You don't have to see that far ahead. You just have to take the next step. And the next step tonight is simply to rest, to close your eyes, if they are heavy, to let the silence be silence rather than a problem, to release, just for tonight, just for these hours, the grip on everything you've been holding so tightly, and let the one who holds the universe hold you instead. You are safe here. You have always been safe here. The fire has never gone out, and the one tending it has never once looked away from you. Not in your worst moments, not in your most faithless seasons, not in the long desert years when you wondered if you had been forgotten. You were not forgotten. You are not forgotten. You are here. He is here. And that simple, stubborn, undefeated fact is enough. It is enough for tonight. It is enough for tomorrow. It is enough. If this time by the fire meant something to you tonight, if something in these words reached a place that needed reaching, I want to ask you to do 3 things. Subscribe and come back. Make this a daily returning, not a one-time visit. There is more to explore together, and the journey is better walked with company. Share this with 5 people, not because the numbers matter, but because you know someone, you already thought of them just now, who is carrying the same tiredness you carried into this evening. Send it to them. That small act of reaching toward another person in their exhaustion is itself a kind of prayer. And leave a comment. Not a performance, just something true. One honest sentence about where you are tonight. Because someone else will read it and feel less alone, and that matters more than you know. Finally, tell me what you need next. What question is still sitting with you unanswered? What weight are you still carrying that we haven't touched yet? Leave it below, and let's keep walking together. The fire is always burning. Come back tomorrow.